Are the Vikings looking at one and done?
I'm not as high on the Rams as Nick is. Nick's been, oogling them from afar and,
I do like the
winking at them and all that.
Yeah.
He loves Matthew Stafford. I'm not as high on Matthew Stafford as Nick is. The last 3 games, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, about an 80 passer rating. Hasn't looked great. Now, he did look great when they beat Minnesota. He had a great game there. I get why people think the Rams will beat them. I think I'm going to go with Minnesota.
Minnesota's the favorite, by the way.
Yeah, but a lot
barely,
of people are talking about the Rams, and I get that, but I'm going to go with Minnesota. I think Flores can come up with something, maybe not to totally shut Stafford down, but certainly to keep him from taking over the game. And Minnesota, kind of like you said, Coach, with Green Bay, they can do pretty much everything. They got the passing game if Darnold shows up, and then they got the running game with Aaron Jones. So I think I'm going to go with Minnesota in this one, so I think they get a win.
Yeah, what's so interesting about this is the last time they had the 2-game win streak, so Minnesota loses to Detroit and then plays the Rams in California and lose the Rams. Now they play Detroit and have to go back to California to play the Rams. It's strange how that kind of played out. I don't think that losing 1 game like they did is necessarily going to mean that they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. And you do have to acknowledge the amount of success that they've had. And granted, the Rams have improved significantly. I'm a little bit like you, Brew. I think at the end of the day, Minnesota has too much to not come away with the win.
So here's what I hate for Minnesota, because I think it's one of the best stories of the season, and I don't think Darnold is as bad as he was yesterday. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like, I think yesterday, what we saw yesterday was, if you can get Sam Darnold off his spot, he's going to think he might be able to run, and he can't. And every time Darnold, turned to run to try to then reset his feet to throw, it's like, oh, you're never getting your feet reset again, and this is going to be a disaster. But what we do have in this specific matchup is the NFC coach with the most playoff experience against the NFC coach with 0 postseason victories. The NFC quarterback with the only Super Bowl win against the NFC quarterback with 0 postseason starts. And in the playoffs, that's enough for me. If I think that the talent otherwise is even somewhat close, and everybody likes Kevin O'Connell, I think he's really good. Kevin O'Connell's been to 1 playoff game ever, lost it at home, Daniel Jones. And Sam Darnold's never been close to the playoffs. Sean McVay has been to the postseason damn near half dozen times. Obviously been to and won a Super Bowl, been to and lost a Super Bowl. Stafford has been in the playoffs consistently with the Rams. So I just don't like that from a matchup perspective for them at all. Had the Rams won and they get Tampa, again, there's a lot of experience for Baker and Todd Bowles, but it would feel less ominous if Minnesota's going to Tampa than Minnesota having to go face the Rams.
Okay. So that was a lot there. There's a bit to unpack there. I mean, you got to get your playoff experience somewhere, somehow. All right. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, this isn't Kevin O'Connell's first season as a head coach here. I mean, he's been around the block. He's obviously shown what he's capable of doing, more than capable of doing. I just love how, the Vikings lose and they drop to 14-3. It's like, oh man, they really smashed into the ground there. It's like, they plummeted. You would think that the sky is falling for the Minnesota Vikings and that, oh man, now they got to go up against the Rams, the juggernaut of the Rams, the team that won 17 games this season, and Matthew Stafford's throwing for 6,000 passing yards and 60 touchdowns. And they have a running back who's run for 2,500 yards. It's like, that's what you would think. That's who the Vikings are going up against. And it's like, it's not the reality. Yes, Stafford has a lot of experience. Yes, Sean McVay has a lot of experience. Matthew Stafford is also old right now. I think Matthew Stafford's great. I think Matthew Stafford is a special quarterback. And I've repeatedly said this season, I struggle to evaluate who Stafford is today in 2025 because some moments he looks like, oh yeah, man, that's the guy that I know. And then there's other moments where I'm like, oh, he looks like he should retire, right? Like, and that's kind of what happens when you're an older quarterback. It's like 1 minute your body's feeling great and loose and you're ready to go, and the next minute you're like, oh my God, I'm never gonna walk again. Like, what am I doing? And so I don't know what you expect in that moment. Is it possible that Stafford balls out and steps up in the playoffs? Like, I believe he won't shrink in the playoffs. I think he will rise to the occasion. What does that look like in practice? Again, we're gonna find out. That's the best part about the playoffs content right now, is that so much of this is like, hey man, there's a lot of predictions floating around and we get to find out. And it just feels obviously so much more intense and more what's the word I'm looking for? Just more pressing when we're dealing with some of these conversations leading up to the playoffs, because for whatever reason, it seems like people get a lot more bold with their predictions when talking about the playoffs, because I think everyone wants to be able to be the first one to be like, I told you. So yeah, this will be a hard game for the Vikings, but in no way do I think that this is they're marching towards their doom. Like, I just, they're playing in a very friendly environment in LA, so that's not going to be super difficult from the Vikings perspective. Yes, Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford should give you a healthy dose of fear, as they should going up against any team like that. I mean, it is Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. That is a great duo. No denying it. And if Stafford got to McVay 10 years ago, Stafford would most likely have multiple Super Bowls. I'm very confident in that, because I do think Stafford's special. But Stafford's not 26 years old right now. He's just not. And we could talk about that Super Bowl. That was years ago at this point. And yeah, McVay had some success, and he had Jared Goff. That's awesome. But again, McVay has had 2 number 1 quarterbacks, right? Like that's who McVay has had with his time with the Rams. Whereas Kevin O'Connell has had to deal with Kirk Cousins. He's had to deal with injuries. He's had to deal with backup of the backups of the backups. Like, Kevin O'Connell has had to deal with a lot more than Sean McVay. They can't even be denied. So you can't just compare these blind resumes to be like, well, this coach has done this and this coach hasn't. And it's like, they're in 2 wildly different circumstances. Like, huh? Sean McVay got Matthew Stafford, and then for good measure got OBJ and Von Miller. Like, huh? These aren't the same things right now. Like, come on. But again, what are we talking about here? So like that it's just not where the logic can take you. I think it should be a great game. I think it's going to be a competitive game, and I really do believe that Sam Darnold and the Vikings as a whole, but definitely Sam Darnold, they got essentially their playoff experience going up against the Lions on Sunday, and so now when they actually face the Rams, Sam Darnold's going to be more settled. He's gonna understand it and be able to predict what he's expecting against the Rams. And if there's any truth to this whole idea that like Sam Darnold can't handle the pressure and this or that, better believe if that was a new thing that just kind of was news to Sam and Kevin O'Connell, well, Kevin O'Connell is an unbelievable coach. I don't doubt Kevin O'Connell's abilities to be a head coach, whether it's playoffs or not. And I do believe he will help Sam get through that if that is indeed a real thing, if that is indeed a real issue. I do believe Kevin O'Connell will set him up to relieve some of that burden. And then it will be kind of like, be my guest. We'll pick you apart. We'll push the ball downfield. Well, you want to keep going all out, like, okay, fine. You better pray we don't get the ball to Addison or Justin Jefferson, because if we do, game over. So that's why I'm excited to also see, in a lot of ways I'm excited to see how Sam Darnold bounces back, as well as what the Rams defense has in mind. Are they going to try to cookie cutter this thing and kind of just copycat what the Lions did, and if that will be good enough to actually work? Or if Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold would be like, oh, that's cool. That's great. You think that there was some magical way to beat us, and once you solve that, again, we've been exposed. Like, that is one of the most, that and hater are some of the most overused words we talk about in sports. You've been exposed, and it's like, okay, or it was just a loss, or it was just a bad game, or it was just a bad moment. Like, those things can happen. When you're exposed, it means it's the truth. I exposed you for being a liar. I exposed you for being someone who can't read. If I expose you for not being able to read, then you can't just magically learn how to read within a week. That's what exposing means. So if you expose Sam Darnold, that means you know the secret to beating him and that you cannot overcome that within the next week. So we'll find out. Has Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings been exposed? If they've been exposed, yep, they'll be one and done. If not, we'll take a look. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Minnesota Vikings? Are they looking like a one and done in the playoffs? Do you doubt their abilities? Like Nick Wright is claiming, as he said, oh, this has been the best story in the NFL. He's made fun of Sam Darnold every step of the way. Kept calling him pumpkin watch and all that. I will go on a whole nother rant, but we'll leave it at that. But let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.